Sorry guys, had a phone call. All right, so we find the mean. What's my mean gonna be here? Okay, what's my mean? What's my average gonna be? My mean's gonna be 7, right? Because if I add these and I add these, divide by 4, I'm gonna get 7. My median's also gonna be 7. Let's go through and look at our range. What's gonna happen with our range? Well, that's the difference between here and here. So my range was 2. Interesting, very interesting. So we had this first data set and we found the mean and the median. So these are measures of center, right? And then we looked at a measure of spread. We could have looked at more measures of spread. We didn't. We just chose one. And then down here I did the same thing. I looked at a measure of center and I looked at a measure of spread. Okay, so let's look at how it changed. So I go to my 1, 2, 3. This would be 4. This would be 5. This would be 6, 7, and 8. Now I've got texts. Like, why can't people just leave me alone? All right, so I have 1 6, okay, and then I've got 2 7s, and I've got 1 8. That's this graph. Well, my mean is 7, and my range, well, look. So what happened? I added 5 to each value, and my measure of center went up. What did my measure of center went up? It went up 5, okay? And then what about my measure of spread? My measure of spread stayed the same. Okay, that's a really important thing to see. So this is called shifting. All that happened here, all that happened was we took these values and we shifted them up. So when you shift it up, your measure of center changes, but your measures of spread stay the same. And that is the important thing, the moral of the story here. That is so important. So if you add a number or subtract, you could say subtract, add or subtract, okay, a number to all data points, your measure of center is going to change, your measure of spread is going to stay the same, okay, and that's called shifting, and you can see it here. I could take if this was loose, I could put my finger on this and just slide it up. The amount that they're away from each other, the standard deviation, the range, the IQR, none of that stuff changes here, okay? None of it changes, only my measure of center, okay? And that's gonna be an important thing now, it's gonna be an important thing in chapter 6, so get it through your head, okay? I think this is a great example. When you're in my classroom, if you look above my door, I have this data set listed up there to help us remember that, to help us with that, okay? So let's look at another situation, okay? We still have that same data set. I'm going to go to a new page, new piece of paper. Okay. So my new piece of paper, I've got that same data set. And it's supposed to be one of those squiggly things. And my mean was 2 and my range was 2. And when I graph that, I've got 1, 2, 3. I could go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's a tip. I'm going to do something up there in a second. So I have 1, 1. I have 2 2s, and I have 1 3. Okay? So what if I did this? What if I did this? What if I took each value and multiplied them times 5? Well, let's look at what happens. So if I multiply by 5, 5 times 1 is 5, and 5 times 2 is 10, and 5 times 2 is 10, and 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, so there are my values. And so what's my mean now? Well, my mean, if I added these up, 5 and 15 is 20, 30, 40 divided by 4, my mean's going to be 10. And my range, well, look at the range now. Now my range is 10 too. So not only did the measure of center change, but my measure of spread also changed. If I was going to graph this, I would have 1 5 there, I would have 2 10s there, and I'd have 1 15 there. So, when I multiply a number, when you multiply a number times all data values, center changes, and so does your spread. Now, your shape isn't going to change, okay? It isn't really. This is roughly symmetric. Guess what? That's still roughly symmetric. So your shape's not going to change with any of these things. But when you multiply a number times all your data values, the center changes, the spread changes. Okay, and we showed it to you here. We went over it. We're going to come back to this example. Okay, we really are. Okay, so let's look at one last example where I've got 1, 2, 2, and 3, and I'm going to multiply that times 3 and then add 5 and get a new data set. So if I do 1 times 3 and I add 5, that gives me 11. 2 times 3 and I add 5, I'm sorry, I said 11, I got 8. I was thinking ahead. 5 times 2 is, I'm sorry, 3 times 2 is 6, plus 5 is 11. And then 3 times 3 is 9, plus 5 is 14. So if I were to make a picture, what do you think is going to happen? Well, let's look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Probably not the same space. It should be, but just doing this to show you an example. There's my 1, my 2, 2, and my 3. And now I've got 1 at 8. I've got 2 at 11, and I've got 1 at 14. So what happened? What happened? Well, they both changed, okay? They both changed, right? And the reason they changed is because I multiplied, okay? This plus 5 isn't going to do anything at all to my spread, but the multiplying did. My shape's the same, okay? And you look, whatever the mean is going to change. The mean's going to change. The measures of center are going to change when you do that. It's going to change for that and change for that. Okay, whereas your measure of spread only changes by the multiplying one. Okay, so that's I think it's a really good example of shifting and scaling. Okay, and I hope you have that in your notes here. You can look here, okay? This is what the book had for you. I didn't like what the book had, and that's the way I learned it. So I find that other example that we'll refer to over and over and over again. But here, it does the same thing. Okay, so it says adding the same number to each observation adds A to the measure of center of location, adds A to your mean, median, quartiles, percentile, but doesn't change the shape, okay, and doesn't change the spread. And they show you some examples here. And then here's your multiplying or dividing, okay? It multiplies your measure of center by B, changes mean, median, quartiles, percentiles, multiplies the spread. So the standard deviation, the IQR, and the range change too. Remember, they both change, okay? Center and spread change when you multiply a number times everything in your data set. Shape still doesn't change, okay? So that's that, okay? Now this is an important thing. I want you to put a star by this, okay? Put a star by that because it's important, okay? Going to be a quiz or a test question someday, ladies and gentlemen. If we were to find the mean and standard deviation as z-scores, scores that have already been standardized, the mean is 0 and the standard deviation would be 1, okay? And for an explanation of that, I'm not going to get into that much. I think it's one of those little tidbits of the course, but they give you a good explanation in the book on page 97, okay? So you guys can start by doing that. Check your understanding on page 97. In the next video, we'll wrap things up with density curves. Okay, looks like I got some more drawing to do here, and we'll do that for you.